Welcome to the second in a series of lectures this academic year on healthcare, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, and social justice. You remember on November 23rd, we were thrilled by Milton's Jennifer DeLeon, who was invited today, but she's teaching until 3:15, and she's disappointed that she can't be here to hear Danielle. Today, we're fortunate to have with us the Poet Laureate of Boston and Lesley University professor, Danielle Legros Georges, which is fitting since we are acknowledging Haitian independence and Danielle's heritage as Haitian. Her talk and her reading will be about identity, which, as you know from the papers that were sent out, she sees as fluid and beautiful. Hence the title of her talk, Fluid, Beautiful Identity. Now, speaking of identity, over the Christmas break I got a very nice gift, and I just finished reading Patti Smith's M-Train. I didn't know if she could talk just kids, but this book, M-Train, is certainly its rival. Talk about multiple identities. Okay? Patti Smith is a singer, a writer, a beat poet, or at least in the tradition of Kerouac and Ginsberg, philosopher, mother, wife, widow, daughter, sister, friend, coffee drinker, chess player, and photographer, to name just some. Anyway, in one part of M-Train, she recalls reading Ibsen's great play, The Master Builder, which Oscar Romero talked about a little bit earlier today, in the lobby of a London hotel. A passerby notices and says, quote, lovely play, but fraught with symbolism, end quote. Patti Smith replies, I hadn't noticed. And she goes on to write what I think is relevant to today. Quote, I'm not much for symbolism. I never get it. I just wanted to get lost, become one with somewhere else, slip a wreath on a steeple solely because I wished it, end quote. When I read of Danielle Legros Georges' appointment as Boston's Poet Laureate a little more than a year ago, I noticed that Danielle talked about demystifying poetry while in the position as Poet Laureate. And I think her poetry demonstrates that perspective, some of which you may purchase afterwards were you to buy Maroon. I believe Danielle is going to read a little today, but I want to read General Sun, which is her poem, to share with you the pure delight I get when reading words she puts together. And I bet Patti Smith would like the poem's playfulness and simplicity. Here it is. The sun is a sly fellow who sneaks into rooms in darkness and pries open eyes with a kiss. He'll play tricks that form fountains from sand, and should you find these bland, he'll become a burning orange bush, take up the sky and blind you before retiring to ponder his incarnations. To me, it's no wonder that Danielle Legros Georges is Boston's Poet Laureate. I'm dying to hear what you will say about identity and pluralism and the immigrant experience in America. I'm also excited to hear her read. She is a true light in our dark world, as Haiti was, and, according to Danielle, should still be viewed that way today. As another great Haitian writer, Edwidge Danticard, advises, Danielle writes dangerously for people who read dangerously. Please welcome and enjoy Danielle Legros Georges.
Thank you for such a kind introduction, Al. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here at Laboure in the midst of people preparing for careers in nursing and allied health fields, in the midst of current and future caretakers and healers, and those who help prepare them, staff, faculty, and administrators. Thank you, Dr. DeCiccio, for the invitation to present as part of this day celebrating Haiti's extraordinary 1804 independence, and also this day in which you all are working on universal design for learning, which I think is really exciting. We're doing some of that work over at Lesley, and faculty are really excited about that work, making its way into pedagogy and into the work we do with students. So back to the 1804 independence. in Haiti. It followed the 1776 U.S. independence. Both were liberation movements from colonial rule. Haiti's from France, as you know, and the United States from England. One from the tyranny of taxation without representation. The other from the tyranny of labor without remuneration, aka slavery. Both revolutions have served as models for freedom-loving peoples the world over, with Haiti's still resonating today because it expressly articulated freedom and self-determination for Black and brown people, for both women and men, and because it still, I would argue, is in the throes of being achieved as Haiti struggles for self-governance today. We're in the midst of presidential elections. As it struggles for a government that will protect its citizens and that is not one that isn't unduly influenced by international interests. I live in a history and space created by both the Haitian and American revolutions. I am Haitian. I am a United Station. I'm a product of the African diaspora. I have somewhere along the line in my ancestry, European, or white people. As you can see, I joined the mutts of the world, like many of us here in the Americas. We are mixes, mestizo, mélange. I'm Black, I'm a Black woman, I'm an academic, I'm an artist, I'm a poet, I love Japanese food and Haitian food, and really enjoyed the Haitian food that was here today. Okay, so you see where I'm going here. Straight to the title of my presentation, the terribly enticing, scintillating, and perhaps mysterious, fluid, beautiful identity. I want to note that my presentation will be a lecture with poems interspersed. The notion of identity is a fairly recent one in contemporary society, in social psychology theory and research. The scholar Judith A. Howard notes, at earlier historical moments, identity was not so much an issue. When societies were more stable, identity was to a great extent assigned rather than selected or adopted. How many of you watched Downton Abbey? So a good number, right? So think of Downton Abbey, right? The roles of the downstairs folks and the roles of the upstairs folks, right? Think slavery. Identity assigned rather than selected. Think traditional gender roles in many countries. In current times, however, notes Howard, the concept of identity carries the full weight of the need for a sense of who one is, together with an often overwhelming pace of change in surrounding social contexts. Changes in the groups and networks in which people and their identities are embedded, and in the societal structures and practices in which those networks are themselves embedded. All this to say, it was a lot easier to simply say who you were in the past, and for people to tell you who you were, if you even thought about that question, right? In the past, you were likely busy doing your thing, living or surviving, not thinking identity. The concept of fluid identity is an even more recent one than the one of identity. Basically, it is a shift from the idea of a stable or static core of self. I am servant in the Grantham household. That is my reason for being. Toward a strategic positional concept with who you are changing depending on where you are and among whom you are. The idea of fluid identity suggests having, as Al suggested, a multiplicity of positions or identities within a general identity. Okay. How many of you watch Empire? So, okay, fewer number. There's a character in Empire who I feel demonstrates a fluid identity. Okay? And so those of you who watch Empire will share with your colleagues aspects of one particular character. That character is Cookie. Oh, yeah. Okay, Cookie. What are some aspects of Cookie's identity? She's an entrepreneur, fierce entrepreneur. She's a mom. She's a loving, we think, mother.
And sometimes the enforcer.
And the enforcer. What else is Cookie?
A badass.
A badass. A bad dude. A bad dude. What else is Cookie?
Criminal.
A criminal, a former criminal. She was formerly incarcerated for having done what? She who told us that Cookie was a criminal.
Technically, took the rap for the
What is it? Yeah, she was a drug dealer, but why was she a drug dealer?
Because of her husband.
Because her rotten husband. And she took the rap for Lucius, right? As they were trying to take care of their family. Anything else we want to add to Cookie's portfolio?
Fashionable.
She's extremely fashionable. She is a fashionista par excellence.
Yes.
Yes.
She's smart.
And she's super smart. Okay, anything else?
She's a musician.
She's a musician.
She's a producer.
She's a producer. And she's the lover of the man with a cow tattoo on his back. That's for next season, right? So all of these facets of Cookie, right? I feel she is somebody with a fluid identity. Many aspects. The idea of border crossing, literal and figurative, can be useful when we think of fluid identity, as can the idea of diaspora, transnationality, what is local, what is global. This idea has us looking at the sense of self in the context of displacement. Who are you when you have moved and have had to adapt? Say from a town, from a school, from a county, from a district, from a country, from a continent. The idea of fluid identity is the notion that you're not just one thing, and that who you are can change based on context, right? Beyond the normal idea of personal evolution and development. Gloria Anzaldúa was an American scholar of Chicana cultural theory and feminist theory. She was influential in articulating the idea of mixed identity, of being mestiza, and multiple aspects of identity in this excellent and very famous text, Borderlands, La Frontera, which was published in, that's my wonderful Spanish accent, La Frontera, published in 1987. And she looked at the destabilization of a unified identity, especially in context of displacement and migration. Now, when I was growing up, I was not aware of this term fluid identity or theory of fluid identity, right? Where were you, theory of fluid identity, when I needed you? I was an immigrant kid. I was born in Haiti, came to the States with my family in the 1970s, and I was trying to figure it all out. I mean, it all, okay? All the contradictions of my life. Why did the rules in my house not seem consistent with the rules of the street? Or the rules of my school? Or the rules relative to race in the United States? There seemed a binary relative to race that did not fit my experience as a Haitian. Here, whiteness meant superiority and blackness lack. At least that's what the mainstream culture and media told us. What did this mean for people coming from a black country, where doctors were black, teachers were black, ophthalmologists were black, traveling women merchants called Madame Sarah were black, presidents were black since forever, judges were black, as well as criminals being black. Why did I see sophisticated, strong, cosmopolitan, and complicated black women and men in my house and among my parents' friends, extremely smart ones, in the larger Boston black community, in the African American community, if black meant lack? Why did my brothers and me listen to WRKO? You know what I'm talking about. The white radio station, not knowing that there was a black radio station that we were supposed to listen to. So not cool. Why did my parents listen to Nana Mouskouri and Jacques Brel and Miles Davis and Schleur Schleur and Skasha? What did it mean to be black? Why did blackness in America feel both limiting and invigorating? What did it mean to be Haitian? Why did Haitianness feel both limiting and comforting? What did it mean to be a girl in a Caribbean family where I was expected to do more household chores than my brothers were? Why were the sandwiches my brothers and I took to school for lunch with bread and meat, tomato and lettuce, and butter, not mayonnaise? Not cool. McDonald's was cool. What exactly was marshmallow fluff?
You don't want to know.
Moreover, why did Americans kiss their dogs on the mouth? Although I allow my cats to kiss me now. Why did my family not in any way, shape, or form resemble the quintessential American family, the perfect Brady Bunch? These were some of the questions of my adolescence and childhood, some insignificant in the larger scheme of things, and some hugely significant. Ones that often asked, I felt, me to choose between one thing or another. Ones that caused emotional turmoil. Why the need to choose black or white, funk, R&B, and soul, or rock and pop, girl or wanting to be a boy? I have 3 brothers, and I'm the only girl in my family. Haitian or American, and then what type of American, with what type of American inflections when I had mastered English. How to talk my blackness, how to signify my Americanness, and how to continue to be Haitian. I was the person in high school who had friends among various groups, among the jocks, among the bibliophiles, that's a lovely word for nerds, nerds in the house, nerds rule, by the way. Friends among the honor society kids, among the girls who smoked Marlboros and whose boyfriends drove them to school in Mustangs. You know the type of girl I'm talking about. I had friends among the queer kids, although we didn't use that word back then. Reefer smokers, check. Good Haitian girls, check, right? I was the kid whose friends she thought could never, ever fit in one room together. Now, even before all of this, there had been the basic task of learning English. In my family, we spoke French and Creole. And so the first word I learned or remember learning in English began with an F.
French? French, right?
That is a good guess.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you to guess again. Can you imagine? No one say it. Just think in your mind. Can you imagine what that might have been? Get your mind out of the gutter, Laboure. It was fish. It was fish. Taught to me by a girl named Lynn Kelleher in the 1st grade, who I'll never forget as a result of that word. My brothers and I were plopped into school and had to swim. There were no bilingual classes for us. And years later, as an adult, and thinking about language acquisition and what the process was by which I learned English and how I went from thinking in French and Creole to thinking, even dreaming in English, I came to the conclusion that some sort of dance occurred, that some sort of cognitive dance was afoot. So I tried to explore the slippery space of how one changes, because it's hard to see one's own evolution sometimes. So in a poem about how I learned English, and so I'm going to read that poem to you. It's called Fishing. first word learned in this language, fish. My eyes were sharks, poised at mouth openings to feed, when lips and teeth engaged tongue to propel sound forward. I gulped, greedy for decoding. My new world tongue, coated, curled about inflexible consonants like a great whale exerting its continental tail. Here, lights that turn off and don't close. Turn notions of wicks in oil to neon strobes, and light waves away the world, almost I know. The swing of my new speech comes hard, like a swim stroke through ice, like an arm akimbo on a girl's hip at a disco. But I was a minnow, and I danced, arm about the predator's neck, he in a sharkskin suit, moving forward a slippery foot, dissolving in light, then turning, returning, dissolving to stir a tango of idiom. Each flip of his foot grounding, each flip of my foot seeking ground. I said, foot. He says, now the dance. So in the poem, English is the predator in the sharkskin suit. I have no choice but to dance with him. Resistance is futile, as the Borg say in Star Trek. Right? But there's a sense that a tango begins, a push and a pull, a back and a forth, with me as much actor as he, right? As it. There's a dance of languages. I'm going to read another poem about acculturation. It's called Another Ode to Salt. And there's a line in the poem, our ancestors, the Gauls being the French. And this line, our ancestors, the Gauls, is a phrase from a French children's history text used widely until very recently in Haiti. So Haitian school kids were learning our ancestors, the Gauls. And so you can see why that's problematic. I mean, some of our ancestors were the Gauls, but some of our ancestors were not very Gaulois. So here is another ode to salt. We navigate snow, not ours, but grown used to. One cold foot over another. Adopt accoutrements, a red scarf, wind-wrapped and tight. Boots, their soles teethed like sharks, shackling our dark ankles. The weight of wool coats borrowed from our ancestors, the Gauls. Masters at this now, we circumvent ice as we do time to reach home. The salt you bend to cast parts the snow around us. I bend and think of a primary sea, of dangers, of harbors of danger and history, of passing through the middle in boats assail in furious storms, human cargo heavy, of mysteries renamed, submerged and sure, riding dark waves, floating long waves to the other side of the water, and the other side, and the next. A number of my poems contain images of water, of things being carried across water, of things carried while moving forward into the unknown. In the poem, I was also trying to evoke the Middle Passage and a broader sense of the Black experience in the Americas, in the New World.
part of my moving forward into the unknown, into the uncharted as an immigrant kid, into some of the areas my parents could not help me negotiate, paradoxically sent me into research about my Haitian roots for models. And I found one of resistance, a model of resistance in Ana Kaona. She's a 15th century Haitian foremother. She was a poet. She's well known in Haitian and Dominican history and letters. She was also a political leader and one of the rulers of 5 regions of Hispaniola, now the island shared by Haiti and the Dominican Republic, at the time of Columbus's arrival in 1492. And she sought to unite the 5 regions, but was ambushed and hanged in her attempt. Her name in Arawak, which is the indigenous language, one of the indigenous languages of the natives of the island, means golden flower. So I was interested in recuperating her as a model for me as a young Haitian woman when I wrote the poem. So I'll read the poem to you. And her name in Arawak means golden flower. Anakauna. And my name will be dropped. Golden leaf, flower. The gold of mountains beyond mountains I have crossed to behold my own face. Despite my body's death, by a Spanish gentleman's deal, sword. Despite divisions of time, of tribes, Taino, Carib, the island's body itself, its zones, Marien, Magua, Maguana, Higüey, Jaragua, engulfed, transfigured, my own children scattered, the poets lost, their tongues scattered, my name buried by music foreign to me, the mountainsides bursting in red, my gestures marooned. I have seen the gaze through time, the sun in eclipse, reflection and reflection, an imprint of my face, the study of my aim, and my name will sow maize. My name will breed vision. My girls will be black, bronzed, and their eyes will be storms. And my name dropped. Golden leaf, flower, voice of gold, the gold of mountains, beyond the mountains I have crossed to behold my own face. So moving back through time and into a more recent moment to the U.S. again. My childhood and adolescent house here in the States is in Mattapan, right down the street. It was very Haitian. We could not escape Haitian traditions, especially when Haitian friends and relatives visited. We Haitians have this nasty habit, Haitians in the house, you will support me, I hope, of kissing people when we greet them. Yes. Like this, like so. Borrowed from, guess whom? Our ancestors, the Gauls, maybe, right? And so if you're really happy to meet someone, you might greet her or him with 2 or 4 kisses. If from the valley of the shadow of death you see coming toward you your twin from whom you had been separated at birth, long lost, you might greet her or him with 6 kisses. So this poem is entitled How to Kiss. And children learn how to kiss their relatives and folks who come over very early. It's How to Kiss. Find it. The children know how to kiss. To descend stairwells when called into rooms of colored lips, whispered entendres, demure smiles. The uncle who en Creole calls us cochon marron, wild pigs. We walk into crooned comment vas-tus that roll too long from gold-filled mouths, thistly jowls. Kiss the cheek, the next cheek, and more cheeks, the odors of Vitalis, the smart man's hair tonic, of Ben Champagne, Chanel No. 5, Eau de Floride, of various adult O's. We bristle in advance against the teenager whose 5 o'clock shadow goes from Sunyard to sit in parlors, his knees eclipsed in cloth, a foreshadow that we too would be the kissed. But Pascal had the audacity once to alter form, opening her mouth to snake a tongue that swept beige powder from the face of Madame à ta grâce, la vache, exposing a patch of brown from chin to ear. Un véritable scandale. Tongue on cheek? Truth, indeed, the wild pigs. So here we have Pascal, who alters the form of kissing by doing something perceived as scandalous in the middle-class living room. Licking Madame Lavache's face instead of kissing it. I read this many, many years ago, and it was a sort of breakthrough for me, a way to understand that moving forward meant not only swimming, but daring to go against tradition. And that to tell the truth could mean disturbing or upending notions of what was socially appropriate or correct or hallowed. This poem also gave me the sense that I was wildly brilliant, deftly deploying puns and double entendres. It was the first time I had successfully, I thought, code switched in my writing. Code switching takes place when a speaker alternates between 2 or more languages in the context of a single conversation. And my brothers and I had done this all the time at home and with our Haitian American friends. It was a natural part of how I thought. But I was always mindful that in mixed company I could not be my multilingual self. But the poem allowed me to record this multilingual self and thought process without feeling I had to translate myself entirely. The novelist Junot Diaz, some of you may be familiar with his work, code switches all the time in his novels. He uses Spanglish and Spanish words and does not italicize them, which would signal their foreignness or otherness. He just drops those words into the text, right? He visually normalizes them, I'd like to suggest that I preceded Juno in this endeavor of code, but I don't know about that. I want to note that code switching can also take place between language varieties, within what we perceive as one language, English, for example. I now use many language registers in my classrooms at Lesley, borrowing language and references from popular culture, from hip-hop, without being too cool about it, as well as, of course, using standard academic language. I feel that students respond well to lessons and language that connect to their full lived experiences. Right? You feel me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Think about when you code switch. All of us have different registers within us. When are you your different selves? As I moved more and more into aspects of a U.S. self, as I studied and lived U.S. culture, African American history, Black cultural production, I was surrounded by and fell in love with hip hop, like so many of my U.S. peers in the 1980s and 1990s, and also with jazz, with its intellectual product, its hybrid nature. It is, of course, an American art form, born of the two mighty musical traditions of Africa and Europe in the early part of the 20th century, born in Creole, New Orleans. I loved the formal experiments American jazz musicians engaged in. They were trying to figure things out as I was, right? They were trying to make sense, some of them, of how to replicate the sound of the city, especially if you were coming out, if you were a part of the Great Migration, the 6 million African Americans who left the rural South in the early part of the 20th century and moved into urban areas in the North, Midwest, and the West. How far could you improvise in jazz and life without losing the way home, however home is defined, or severing the tether? What happened if you broke the chain? Jazz musicians were building metaphysical castles, creating a new language in music. And I was especially taken by women jazz musicians, Ella Fitzgerald, Bessie Smith, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday, later Nina Simone, and I wanted to write like jazz. What happens when there is no straight narrative? First A, then B, then C, then D. When you go from here to here to here. Right? This is what had happened in my life. My family left Haiti. We moved to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, later named Zaire, and later to the United States. What does your life look like when you have to reconfigure yourself? What does your life sound like? This poem that I'm going to read to you was an experiment to convey meaning without the words operating in a conventional fashion. I wanted some deeper meaning. And I don't know if I was successful, but I'm going to read it to you. And Lewis Carroll, actually, the guy who wrote Jabberwocky, Twist-Brillig, and the Slyly Toads, used nonsensical language in his poems. And I was also inspired by Lewis Carroll. This is called Hen, Hen, Hen. A dive from tree, from rock and rock, skipping like an aged heart chained to machinery. A running hum, the strum of a life cord plucked. Still feet, warm heart, cold feet, heart jumps rope. Hope skips, a rocket's purr pierces twilight. Flight, the wind supreme, rooftops, dreidling, blue-green marble worlds swallowed like pills. Pills. Pillbox church huts and steeple spires are dots from here. Keep the beam, not to drop, to bob, untethered, unrepentant. Look, Icarus rising. No, woman, metal-winged, flighty, hinty may be, but flapping, yes, shaking off the chick bird tree. Cat calls fall flat to her, ear to wind. She hatched for speed, for cruise above the rooster's crow. Coo-coo-coo-coo. Don't watch him anyway, they say, and puff it up, peck at plumes, fume. Well, hen, hen, hen. Sistren wing and work a thing, bring and gather band wastes croon. Make haste, make haste. Flying lessons starting now. Another poem from that jazz period is Songs for Women. I was thinking about Billie Holiday and the difficulty of her life and the greatness of her life and art and the challenges she faced as a black woman, as a mixed race woman, as an artist. And I wanted to, the hope was that I wanted her not to have gone through what she had gone through. I will there be no women here who would circle red-dressed, ruby-hearted, glass-cut. If there be flowers, then the bloom of cyclamen on in greens glowing, night vase, night shade, wild in wind. Sin be the will to descend, hummingbirds still steal the fire's sound, take note and return it. Let song be the skin of a glimmering, unsettled, raising, belly deep in the strike of match and band. Be the belly, the pepper pot, come close just to drop it. Slide till the notes are a scaffold, ash flicked, unphoenixed. It is not easy being a woman artist, and many women artists can attest to this. U.S. literary journals publish far more men than women. Museums contain much more work by male artists than women artists. It's not easy being a black woman artist. The Haitian literary canon, for example, was until very recently dominated by men. Thank you, Edwige Chantika, for breaking that. So how to negotiate these structures that do not recognize aspects of who you are and your whole fluid, wonderfulness. Here, the recent notion of intersectionality, first named by, in 1989 by legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, helped me as a black woman. It helped create a new field of scholarship dedicated to the study of women of color and marked the beginning of what is now known as the race, class, and gender scholarship area. It essentially argues that the experience of being a black woman can't be understood just if we look at blackness, or if we only look at gender, right? We can't look at these aspects of identity independently, but must include their interactions, which frequently reinforce each other. Intersectionality, right, can help us look at the life of Billie Holiday in a holistic way, or my own life as a kid who had pretty progressive parents at home, right, as far as they come, but was burdened with more family responsibility than my brothers. My writing and art, and later the theory of fluid identity, helped me reconcile the various parts of me. It allowed me to understand my deliberate lack of identity fixity as positive, despite social pressure to fit into boxes. The theory of intersectionality, which I didn't go into great detail about, but I just want to suggest it to you as an area of further exploration. The theory of intersectionality allows me to understand how aspects of my identity, fluid as it may be, operate in broader contexts of inequity and access, and makes me better equipped to respond to oppressive actions. I believe we are complex creatures with various aspects, with all kinds of moving parts. I believe we each deserve to live in a society, in a country, in a world even, that allows us the freedom to self-identify, to make ourselves, to realize our dreams. I feel we should each be able to live in an environment that does not ignore difference of skin color, gender, religion, choice of partner, but does not limit us because of it. I believe we ought to deeply question any society in which our differences or aspects of our identities make us targets for less than, for lack of due process, for limited access to decent housing and jobs, or enough to eat, or safe streets. And we see our own society being questioned certainly by the Black Lives Matter movement, and before that by civil rights and women's suffrage, and I could go on. Right? I believe we each deserve the freedom to express full humanity, our full humanity, to be our wonderful, fluid selves. I'm going to close with two poems and that take me back to my sort of Haitian identity and thinking about Haiti. They were written after the 2010 devastating earthquake, which many of us witnessed on television. And people with Haitian neighbors and Haitian family members know that almost no Haitian was not affected by this. So the first is called Poem for the Poorest Country in the Western Hemisphere. After the earthquake, there was a great deal of coverage in all kinds of media, but in the mainstream media I saw, or I heard Haiti over and over being referred to as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, almost as if that were the only metric by which Haiti was assessing, as if it were Haiti's last name. And I thought, I'm Haitian, I love Haiti. Haiti is a complex place. It has great poverty, it has great beauty. It's all of that. And so I wanted to respond to that label. So this is a poem for the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, poorest country, this is not your name. You should be called Flame and Beacon, Almond and Bougainvillea, Garden and Green Mountain, Villa and Hut. Little girl with red ribbons in her hair, books under arm, charmed by the light of morning. Charcoal seller in black skirt, encircled by dead trees. You country are the business person and the eager clerk, the grandfather at the gate, at the crossroads, with the flashlight, with the light. And I'll close with this poem. It's entitled Intersection. And I was asked to submit a poem to a magazine that was going to support relief efforts in Haiti right after the earthquake. And I was asked to write a poem that somehow responded to the earthquake. And I found it really hard to find words, more than 250,000, some estimates are 300,000. People lost their lives in a brief period of time. I found that so difficult, and those lives could have been saved had it not been for structural violence concerns, infrastructure concerns, and so on. And so it was very difficult to wrap my head around. So this is the poem that I wrote. Intersection. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. Earth. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. I walked. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. Ash. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. I walked through it. I walked. The earth shook. A portal opened. I walked through it. Ash. 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 The earth shook. A portal opens. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opens. I walked through it. The earth shook. A portal opens. I walked through it.
It was great, Danielle. Would you entertain some questions if people have them? Anybody?
Just need to think about this question a little bit. There's been so much you talked about today, Danielle, that was food for thought for me. My mind's racing a little bit. You referenced earlier in your talk sort of the theme of crossing frontiers, and also fluid identity, and then talked about your own journey with your family from Haiti to Congo to the United States, and I'm just curious if you found that individuals whose journey has taken them across more frontiers tend to be more fluid in their identity, just more more dependent on time or place or...
Well, it certainly has been my experience. I can't speak for everyone. I think having to change environments requires you to, it forces you to adapt. Or you're going to crack, or you're not going to survive, right? And so I think there is something to be learned. There are lessons about adaptability that one gains, and I hope empathy too. That's a very brief response to your question, but I hope it in some way addresses it.
Sometimes you don't have to go too far across a frontier. I went to market basket in Chelsea. It is. And down one aisle, I'm in Saudi Arabia. I go down another aisle, I'm in a Central American country. I go down into another one, and I resonate with my French language with the Haitian folks who are doing their shopping there. And it really brought me back. I had the privilege of being myself with a France family migrated to Canada. But then as you were speaking, I said, oh my goodness. Historically, we both in our own ways have France to thank for our culture and for our food and language. And it became, in Haiti, as I understand a bit of history, it became the language of the free person out of the slave rebellion. You know, there was some nasty things that happened. And yet it became a very liberating creature for folks to rally around. The same thing in Quebec. When my family migrated, we really made an effort to learn English in the community and all the rest, but we held to our traditions and to our language at home around the Christmas tree, around birthday, da-da-da-da. And it became kind of an anchor, and from there, we looked to see, well, what we could learn and glean from looking into a mirror and not necessarily seeing ourselves reflected back, particularly when we're hearing languages and idioms and culture, you know, and traditions that were not, you know, I was like original to my own, and it was like a real learning process. So when you speak of empathy, I think that's really, really key to allow ourselves to be open to understand and perceive other cultures different than our own and to learn and not to diminish our own in the process. Do you see where I was going with that?
Yes, I do, and I appreciate your comment. I mean, two thoughts. One, most Haitians speak Creole, right? And some Haitians speak French. So Creole is, if there is a Haitian language, I would argue that it is Creole. But then your thought about empathy. Yeah, I really.
Well, yours, thank you.
What I thought about empathy, I think can be extended to folks studying nursing and allied health, studying nursing and in the allied health field. I imagine that you think about empathy, right? Particularly as you're going to be working with all kinds of different people and trying to reach them and heal them. I imagine that's going to be an important part of sort of your training or what you think about. Perhaps it's a question too.
So, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but in the essay, the short essay that is in Others Will Enter the Gates, you conclude by saying American poetry as a body is best when it reflects America's inherent pluralism and defies the monoculture America never was. It made me think about something I heard many years ago at Laboure College when a person, you may know her, Valora Washington, used the phrase e pluribus unum and said, out of many one. What's certain is diversity, what's uncertain is unity. And it made me think about our earlier discussion that you weren't part of, but you alluded to in terms of thinking about teaching and learning with students. In somewhere you talked about celebrating the diversity of all of us, the different identities we have to make a richer experience. And I think there's something there that you're trying to tell us about not just identity and living in the world, but also about our endeavors as educators too.
Yeah, I mean, diversity enriches us. Like, sitting in a room with everyone who thinks the same way doesn't teach us a whole lot, right? We learn from tension, we learn from difference, right? Provided that we don't place certain particular values to people or attach particular value to people who are different, right? A person is different and that means X or Y. I think we've got to like come together on sort of on a level field to be able to learn from one another.
I was thinking about the creation of identity in what you're talking about, and thinking about how our students are here as an act of will, and in choosing a direction to go in their careers, they're creating a possible identity for themselves, which will expand the number of identities that all sort of will blend together. Can you identify for yourself areas where you made a choice that created that identity? Because certainly some of our cultural heritage and maybe moving as a child, there are parts of our identity that are deeply a part of us, but it's not something we choose. It's just because of our circumstance.
Yeah, two pieces of my identity that I deliberately pursued. One, my Haitian identity. I sought to run from it as a kid, but then as a teenager, I ran straight back into it. As I thought that there was something that I needed to do, and that it was fertile ground. That there was a lot of there were great models there. There was a lot of goodness there. There was information that would tell me something about my place in the world. So my Haitian identity, and two, my identity as an artist. I called myself an artist when I was about 30 years old. And when I did that, all of this great stuff started to come. Before I'd been reluctant to proclaim myself as an artist. I thought, oh, it's too grand a title or a mantle to adopt. But for me, it was one of the few spaces that allowed my fluid identity. I could go just about anywhere. I could think about just anything. You know, I feel that my job as an artist is to be in the great world and to somehow channel what I'm seeing and experiencing into some kind of truth. So artist lets me do that. And there was somehow there was some connection between my Haitianness and my artist self. Like the Haitian women of my mother's generation were great pioneers. They would go just about anywhere. Like, if the best fish in town was to be found in Chinatown, guess where all the Haitian ladies were going? To Chinatown. So I felt that there was this kind of fearlessness in pursuit of what was good for their families, for themselves, that made them I don't know if it made them artists, but it gave them freedom. And I saw women being go-getters.
That fearlessness must help if you're going to adopt the identity as an artist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what is the path, right?
Danielle, thank you for that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go back.
I have a quick comment and a question that are tied. I think there's great power in your theory of fluid identity, beauty, empathy, truth, all of that. And especially as I observe the world and its challenges that are terribly complex and important around globalization and the digital revolution, global warming, these complex problems where diversity of perspective and view are absolutely critical for figuring out how we're going to order ourselves going forward. So I'm very moved by the power of that set of ideas in a theory and how it's expressed in your poetry and your discussion. And I wonder how that would address or account for centeredness, right? Because your presentation to me expresses extreme fluidity of identity, but at the same time a centeredness. And I'm a little like, how do you?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. I feel that I had very little choice in adopting fluid identity. I was forced to move.
Right.
The political environment in Haiti was such that my parents had to leave. Right? So it wasn't a choice. I mean, if things had gone well in Haiti, I would be a very happy Haitian, or not, right? Right? Living in Haiti. But we were among the lucky, Haitian families who could leave. Right? at the time that we left. And so I don't know that it was a choice, and yet I live in a physical body, right? I have to negotiate the world in particular ways, so I think centeredness is in some way is as unavoidable as fluid identity. It's a great question, and in support of fluid identity, I tend to be someone who doesn't talk about herself, right? Because I want to kind of know where I am, and I sometimes get the question, I'm like, who are you, right? If you can move so freely.
Is
And
it only situational?
yes, yeah.
It's just something.
Yeah, but I think at the core of me is the searcher, is the person who asks the questions, which makes me, an artist, right? Is the person who wants to be the fly on the wall, and I find that strangely a core part of who I am.
Thank you.
In the red?
Danielle,
Yes.
if your identity you were raised the way you were,
Yes.
came back from home as Danielle, how can you describe one of your identity as a bad habit? Is it because you were living in another country, you compare your habit to another country as a bad habit? Because I'm talking about the kissing part, because as a mother, I'm raised with 2 years old. I'm not gonna tell her not to kiss your parents, not to kiss her, because it's a kind of love. That's how we perceive it, like love and respect.
Mhm.
That's how we did it when we meet like our parents or our neighbors. What makes it different? Is it because we live in the United States, that's not the way we do it? Or is it because you find out it's a bad habit?
I don't think kissing is a bad habit. I mean, I was playing when I said, the nasty habit. I love kissing people. I like to be
Because
kissed.
that's how you were raised, like.
And I was raised to kiss,
Love and-
yes. Yeah, I was raised to kiss, but I'm not gonna kiss just everyone. I'm gonna
No.
kiss people who understand
Yeah, you're
the
strong.
the habit of kissing,
Yeah.
or the, right? So again, it's situational. I might kiss you, but I may not kiss, I don't know, someone else.
Somebody you just met in the street now.
Right, but I'm always interested in the traditions and
What you live.
what I left in traditions, and also the stuff that makes things uncomfortable too. I like discomfort.
Yeah.
Because I think there's
that the young kids, Haitian kids that is young, like, they don't kiss. They don't.
Yeah, they don't kiss anymore.
They don't do that.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Did you have, John?
Why don't you just, I think probably, it seems to me that when you're talking about the solidity of identity versus kind of like an older notion of identity that's more stable, it's also probably worth thinking about power.
Could you speak up, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's also probably worth thinking about power, just because, I'll give you an example. That guy, Alan Bundy, who's an occupying the bird sanctuary in Oregon. I saw him being interviewed over the weekend, or earlier this week, and he said, he was asked about the fact that the land that he's claiming he and the ranch are the ranch, really, before it belonged to the government, it belonged to Native Americans that appropriated it. And I said, what do you think about that? Because he's claiming that he has a right to this land. And he said, I don't know about that. But, and no one in the media obviously would contextualize it this way. But underneath that, that's actually a consequence of this kind of older notion of identity, right? It's inconceivable to him that anybody else would have claimed for that matter,
Right.
because he can only he sees himself through, I guess, a kind of 19th century notion of that as destiny. That
Right.
it's there, that it's his, it's a white branch.
And white privilege, yeah,
White privilege, exactly.
yeah.
And it seems to me that the only way you can really kind of challenge that notion is by consciously trying to create the circumstances in which people begin to think of themselves in a more fluid way. Open up the space for the kind of empathy that you're talking about, which would then in turn that privilege. So, I mean, I agree that what usually makes us start to think about fluid identity is almost always circumstantial, usually beyond our control, at least initially. But it seems to me as kind of an intellectual project to create a more socially just society. It's probably essential that we start trying to do that.
That we start doing, I didn't hear the
To
last.
start kind of consciously, actively trying to cultivate that kind of identity.
Yeah, and it starts by looking at the various aspects of who you are. I mean, there's now this new area of white studies, right? Where whiteness used to be the norm, right? Now white people are beginning to look to understand themselves as having race, where, you know, in the past it was just other people who had race. And so that, I mean, that's one place to consider.
But it implicitly suggests or that some identities, because they're so privileged, are really problematic.
Yeah.
You can't just sort of treat them as all these choices. You have to have some kind of system that historicizes things, kind of say whether or not they're actually identities that have kind of legitimacy.
Everybody else? Danielle, thank you for an informed talk, moving reading. Thanks so much for enriching this day. You have some books if you want to stay afterwards and read the